So at Outdoor Life, we've altered our accuracy protocol over the last couple years. We've always been a fan of shooting 5-shot groups versus 3-shot groups, but as we've come to learn, even 5-shot groups are not adequate, both when it comes to assessing the precision of a given rifle and ammo combo, but also in terms of, and this is more importantly, setting your zero. And so we've developed a 20-shot protocol, which might sound a little intimidating, but really isn't that bad. So this video is kind of a little instructional how-to on how we use the targets that we designed, these EATS targets, for doing 20-shot groups, aggregating them, and what you then do with that data. So I've got here this Accuracy International ATXC, really fine precision rifle. It's chambered in 6mm Creedmoor, and we're going to do this this process with these rounds from Federal. It's the 107 grain Sierra Match King, which is really shot quite nicely. So hopefully what we're going to see is some good results downrange, and we're going to really be able to fine tune the zero on this rifle with this load. On top of that, we are going to be recording the velocity data with everything with this little guy here, this Garmin chronograph. And with 20 shots of data, we're going to establish a great zero. We're going to really have a great read on the average muzzle velocity, and we'll make note of the temperature out here in Arizona. And it's going to go a long way to giving us confidence for long-range shooting. But also just for hunters, you know, if you're using your standard hunting rig with your hunting ammo and you want to establish your zero, think about dedicating a single box to this process, and you will be able to roll into deer camp or out west on your elk hunt with a lot of confidence. Now I'm going to do, normally when I do this, I will, kind of shoot, maybe, it depends on the gun, a 5-shot group, let the gun cool a little bit, shoot another one. It doesn't matter actually if you do this in 5-shot groups, 3-shot groups. You can even do it in single shots if that were your druthers. But because this is a heavier barreled gun, kind of designed for competition and sort of in the interest of expediency, I'm just going to hammer through 20 rounds on this and demonstrate the process. We have a camera set up downrange on the target that will pick up the impacts as we do them. And so we're going hot here with the AI. I'm going to get behind this gun and just start putting down 4 or 5-shot groups. And here we go. There's the first group of 5. This AW mag holds 10 rounds. So we will be able to get group number 2 down there. And I might need, depending on how the heat treats me, I might need to get a fan to kind of blow some of the mirage away. Because, as we do this and that suppressor heats up, you can get a fair bit of interference in your sight picture. But other than that, we have just smooth sailing here. All right, there's the first 10. We're gonna restock this here and keep after it. Again, like I said, there's no reason to rush this kind of the way we're doing, unless you have a competition gun. Look, if you have a comp gun and it is designed to maybe shoot 10-round stages or more, then it does make sense to actually shoot it at that pace and in that volume to assess how it goes. But we've done this hundreds of times now, and it's fascinating to see. Naturally, if you do 3-shot groups, they're going to be tighter than your 5-shot groups. But when you aggregate them, when you overlay all of the impacts like we do, you see that it really doesn't matter. Shooting 3-shot groups slowly versus 5-shot groups kind of deliberately, you end up with the same results. It's a really cool process. Here, I'm just going to grab my fan here real quick. Thank you. This, by the way, if you shoot suppressed or even, particularly suppressed or just get after it and get hot with stuff. Having a fan just give enough breeze to kind of push that mirage off is a big benefit. So anyway, that's just one tip on how we're able to get as many rounds down ranges as we do. Okay, so here is shots 11 through 20. There we go, 20 shots. 20 shots in quick succession. First thing I'm gonna do is take a look at my chronograph here and record that data. Now remember, what we wanna do with all this is get really valid information about how our gun and ammunition perform. And if you're doing 5-shot strings, 3-shot strings with your chronograph or the group, you're wasting your time a little bit. You're just not getting a very accurate feed. So I see here I've got 3119 as my average muzzle velocity, 20 shots, man, that you can take that to the bank. The extreme spread of 36.1, which is fabulous for factory ammo. That is really good. And a standard deviation of 10.2. And even for hand loads, 10.2 is really, really good. For factory ammo, it's outstanding. So this, just based on what we saw here and actually what I've seen down here, let's go take a look. This is a load you could easily compete with. And actually, I've also have shot a lot of deer and antelope size game with bullets like that too. That's devastating on them as well. It's a match bullet, not intended for big game, but on deer game, antelope size game, if you want, it really is absolutely fine. So this protocol sort of has its origins from a few different sources. The guys at Hornady have really done a great job in amassing voluminous quantities of shooting data, looking at precision, looking at things like dispersion, consistency with BC, consistency with velocities. And what we've seen, particularly for hand loaders and guys who compete in practical precision rifle stuff like I do, we've seen how more data gets us where we want to be. So you can see here, group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are all really good groups. I mean, the Accuracy International, it's almost not fair, right? That shoots as well as it does. But you can see our shots are definitely low of the point of aim right there. So that'll be an adjustment. You can see they're off to the left. And we are going to aggregate all 20 of these into one group that's going to make a really pretty picture. And then we're going to use a group analysis tool to get the final bit of data. And that final bit of data is going to show us the extreme spread of those 20 shots. More importantly, the mean radius. Now, the mean radius is kind of an interesting concept and one that's not necessarily intuitive, but it is a more valuable metric by which to judge a rifle's performance than group size. And that is because the mean radius takes into account all of the shots. So you have 20 points of data in this case that will go into that mean radius calculation versus an extreme spread, which is just the two worst. So just from a statistical standpoint, you can kind of see the logic there. Now, what mean radius means is that the average distance from the point of aim or from the center of the group to where the bullets land, that is the mean radius. And so if it's a 0.4 inch mean radius, that means on average your bullets are landing 0.4 inches from the center of your group where your rifle is zeroed. If you get into the 0.3s with a hunting load, that's really fine performance for a 20-shot group. If you get down into the 0.2s, upper 0.2s, 0.25 and up, man, you're in the money. For competition guns, that 0.2s is great too, but if you can get into the 0.1s, like below 0.20, you have just a hammer of a gun. So that's kind of how to think about mean radius. So we're gonna, scoop back to a little protected awning here, and I'm gonna show you exactly how we plot this out. Okay, so we've done our shooting, and now it's time for a little arts and crafts. And so this involves a couple of things. Here's a piece of cardstock, which is what we're going to transfer these bullet hole impacts onto. Before we get to that though, let's just take a quick look at this target. It's called the EATS target for Extremely Advanced Tactical Sighting Target. And as you can see, it's a series of 8 aiming points and with these little dots in here. Now these dots are reference marks. The center dot is the point of aim, right? The center of the circle, that's where we're going. So this gives us a nice kind of crisp point to use when it comes to using the group analysis tool that will help us adjust our windage and elevation to get our zero perfect. These little guys are all exactly 1 inch apart, and those are the calibration points that we use to allow the group analysis tool to tell us exactly how big those groups are. So one thing is, these targets are available for free on Outdoor Life. You can find them and print them out and everything. One thing to be careful is that when you do print them out, make sure you're printing them out at full size, because of the way this is, sometimes it might be outside the margins of your printer. And so what you want to do is just make sure, so I've got this set right at 1 inch right here. So what you want to do is just make sure that when you print it, that center to center, those dots are exactly 1 inch. And you can see that's the case there. So this is printed out correctly, because, if your printer shrinks that down a little bit, you're robbing yourself of some accuracy. It's going to tell you didn't shoot as good as you actually did. All right, so in order to kind of do this now, one thing that's nice is that this being on 8.5 by 11 paper, it lines up really well with this. So what we're going to do is we are going to line up the cardstock with the target above, and then take a sharp tool, and we're going to poke a hole right through group 1, right on the point of aim there. So we've got a nice point of aim kind of calibrated underneath. You can see it poked right through there. We call this the pokey tool process for obvious reasons. And then from there, what we do is we will poke holes in the 1 inch reference marks as well. And so what this does is we can now go underneath here, and you see that we've got our center point of aim there, and then we've got these 2 points here. I didn't poke all the way through on that one. You can use a thumbtack or anything that's sharp and precise, but those are kind of our reference points. Now what we do with this sheet lined up is that we'll take a pen and we will put a dot right in the center of each impact. So there's 4. I just got to find the 5th one because it's so tight. And number 5 is right there. All right. So now what we do, check this out, is we poke a hole through the 2nd center aiming point. It's off the cardstock. And then what we do is we line the 2 up. So you line those up just like that. You can see through it. And you can see that the paper is nice and square to itself. So these dots here, these bullet hole impacts, are lined up perfectly with respect to the point of aim on the first one. So then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Shift over to the 3rd, do the same thing. And you don't have to use these EATS targets to do this. You can use any type of target you want, as long as you keep your point of aim the same relative to kind of where you're marking the target. This target is designed to facilitate this process, to make it easier. But you can do this with traditional sight-in targets as well. It's just, we do this enough. We wanted kind of a more elegant, easy to execute solution, and this is what we came up with. So I'm now putting a hole through the 4th and final group. You can see I keep lining stuff up right there. You can see our cluster of shots forming. We've got 5 more to add to the group here. We'll get that lined up, get this squared away. And then Now, you don't have to do these in different colors. I kind of like to do it because I think, one, it just looks so damn good. And two, God, I have two like right on top of each other there. And two, it helps you actually when you have two like right on top of each other like that to sort of differentiate the shots. You can also do this with like a thumbtack. That's how my colleague Tyler Friel likes to do it. I like using the pretty markers. And you can see one thing that we've got here is when you aggregate all of these groups, you typically want to have something that's sort of an oval or roundish shape. If you have something that's kind of lining out or something like that, then you have an indication that maybe something's wrong with your mounting system or your barrel walks. But I'll tell you what, that whole idea of the barrel walking is one that's not as prevalent as you might think, and we've learned that through this process. So now what we do with this is there are a couple of different apps. I've got the Hornady app, and on there is the group analysis tool. So you go into there, you click on the plus sign, and it says take photo of target. So we get up here and we'll take a photo, and you want your camera kind of nice and flat so you don't get some weird curvature in the target. That's another thing that's nice about using this like hobby pad. You know, I can kind of have the reference lines down there, and that helps me do all of that. Actually, I'm going to take this vertical, make it a little more easy to do. So just get it nice and flat, lined up well. There we go. So you hit plus plus, and now I've got the photo here, and I can just zoom in on it like this. And then I start with the group analysis here. The first thing we do, it says distance to target, 100 yards. Bullet diameter. Now, if you're measuring right off of this, off of the bullet holes, and don't want to aggregate that, that's where you want to select the correct bullet diameter. But honestly, it's easier this way with the 22 caliber setting because the holes that it puts on the picture are smaller, so you're less likely to obscure other shots. So I just keep it at 223 there. If you're using this dot method, this point method, it doesn't matter what you put in on that one. So then we do our measurement points. I zoom in on here and I go to the holes that we made at the 1 inch mark. So there's one, and move it around. You can be very precise with that. Add in 2. We add in our point of aim, our little hole that we poked in the middle there, get that nice and lined up. Boom. And now what we do is we add the impacts, and this is kind of the fun part. Usually what I do is I start at the edges and work my way in so that you don't end up with a big deep cluster in the center that's everything is overlapped and kind of gets sloppy. And especially if you have an accurate gun, something that's really stacking the bullets, it can be a little tough. It can be a challenge to record all of the shots. So you kind of gotta just be a little cognizant of where all of the impacts are. If you've got a hunting rifle that is more of maybe a print 1.5 inch groups at 100, it's a little easier, but with a tight shooting son of a gun like this, it's a little more of a challenge. But I'm keeping tabs on everything here. And as we go, there's a little white X in the center of the group here that shows kind of where the center of the group is. It takes all of these data points, and you can see every time I add another impact there, it moves ever so slightly. And at this point, the movement is so tiny that it's hardly moving at all. So there, now we're done. And we hit done, and this gives us our data. That group was 0.94 inches in extreme spread. So I'm going to make a note of that here. The extreme spread is 0.94 inches, so under an inch. The mean radius, 0.25 inches. Excellent. Excellent performance. And my elevation offset is negative 0.78 inches. And my windage offset is negative 0.47 inches. So what does that mean? So if we're an MOA shooter, man, we are in luck. If we come up 3 clicks, 3 3 clicks in MOA, 3/4 of an MOA, that's going to put our elevation at just 3/100ths off. I mean, insignificant. And the same thing with the windage. We come right 2 clicks, half an inch, 0.47 inches. We are right there. But what this allows us to do, if we're a mill shooter, and this is a mill system, each mill, each tenth of a mill is 0.36 inches. And so what I can do with this data now is I can be like, well, if I'm 0.78 inches low, if I do, 2/10, that gives me 0.72 inches versus 0.78. So again, come up 2/10 of a mil, I am right on. And then I will come right 1/10, and that's 0.47 inches is how far I'm off, minus 0.36. And that gives me, 11/100ths, my windage impact off. Again, that's, perfect for any kind of zero. So with this data now, we have really good velocity numbers. We averaged 3119 feet per second. We know that our extreme spread was only 36 on this, which is fantastic for 20 shots, standard deviation of 10.2. So what we have learned here is that we have a dead nut zero that we can dial into our scope. We know how well this gun shoots based off of that 0.25 inch mean radius, which is excellent. That means that of these shots, if you look at the center of the group, half of them are closer than 1/4 of an inch and the other half are outside 1/4 of an inch. The extreme spread of that 20 shots was under an inch. We've got a great muzzle velocity to put into our ballistic solver, and we know that based on 20 shots with a standard deviation of 10 feet per second, if we were doing real precision, long-range shooting at 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards, we know that this is more than capable of delivering good results at those distances. For regular hunting stuff, it's beyond perfect. And so this is the each target system, and that is how you aggregate. Groups into 20 shots. Now, of course, people are still interested in 5-shot groups, and so we can kind of take a look at, well, what do we do here in terms of 5-shot groups? We can measure this by expanding this. We were shooting a 6mm bullet, so I go to 243.5, zero this, and now I can just measure edge to edge here on the furthest shots, right where they cut through that paper. That's a 0.411 inches. .357. .618. And last but not least, let's see which way this guy is furthest apart. That's 0.456. Yeah, he's closer. He's furthest this way. So yeah, 0.4. Oh, here, hold on a second. Let me redo that. I bumped. 0.453. 0.453. So now traditionally, if we're looking at 5-shot groups under, 0.4, 0.35, 0.618, 0.34, we would call this a half-minute gun. But as you can see, when we overlay these shots, it's actually at 20 shots, it's just under an inch. So that language of describing, well, my gun's an MOA gun or a half MOA gun, we don't do that quite as much anymore because it really depends on what you're talking about. If we just did 3 shots, those numbers would be even smaller. But if we did 3 shot and did 20 shots in 3-shot groups, and 1 4-shot group, we would end up basically with that same data. So, no reason not to use the 5-shot groups if you want, but they can be a little kind of misleading. This is a much more statistically valid way to look. And like I said, it gives you a dead nut zero, gives us dead nuts velocity data. This is stuff where we can really go out with our rifle and have a lot of confidence in what it does. And also we understand now this cone of dispersion that's in here, so that if you're rolling into hunting camp or wherever, you zero it at home and you do a real zero. Now we go into camp and we see that the shot is maybe a little off or a little up. Instead of now chasing that zero, well, I need a click here, a click there, we can understand that that shot, if it falls in the sort of the dispersion pattern that the gun does, you don't need to touch a thing. That gun is still zeroed. Obviously, if something major happens, the thing falls off the truck while it's moving, okay, we're gonna maybe recheck. But if you're just traveling normally and there's kind of no trauma that happened to the gun, there's no need to start fiddling with your zero when you get to camp. This system just eliminates so much uncertainty in the whole process of zeroing a rifle, and that's why we become such fans of it. And it also really gives you a very accurate look, pardon the pun, on a rifle's performance relative to a given load of ammo or other rifles you might have. So we're big fans of the EAT system and the 20-shot zero, the 20-shot aggregate. Give it a try. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments and we will set you straight.